Hey, everybody. Welcome to Mighty Blaze. I'm Jenna Blum, one of the co-founders of The Blaze, here with my co-founding sister, Caroline Levitt, who I haven't seen in forever. Hi, I love you. And Karen, our newsletter director, and Ellen, our Twitter director and debut Spotlight host, and Mary Weber O'Malley, who is everybody's best bookseller at large in the universe, coming to you live from the universe. We are so excited to have our December Blaze pop-up book rec party. Say that 8 times fast after you've had something in your glass. Definitely just tea, not beer. But first, I want to tell you guys, if you are new to the Blaze, welcome to our team of 30-ish creative professional volunteers dedicated to linking readers and writers in the age of COVID and beyond, and tonight to getting you book recommendations to fill your stockings, because what makes better books than gifts? Literally nothing. So on that note, I'm going to hand the scepter over to Caroline, who's going to start us off with her book recs for the season.
Okay, so the first book we have is Lazarus Man by Richard Price. And I just interviewed him last week, and you can go to the Blaze's interviews on YouTube to watch it. He's incredibly funny, incredibly smart, just the nicest guy in the world. Lazarus Man is set in New York City, where all of Richard's books are set. And it's based on a true story where a building Richard was walking by exploded. But the book isn't really about the building so much as it's about the characters surrounding the building. There's a female cop, because of course Richard Price is all about cops. There's a funeral director who's trying to get new clients for his business. And there's the Lazarus Man himself, which is just this ordinary guy who survives the building stuff, changes his life. This is very different from most of Richard's other books. He's also written scripts, including The Night Of, which was really wonderful. But it's wonderful, and I really urge you all to watch his interview because he talks a lot about writing. And fun fact, Richard hates writing. He will sit there and eat cookies all day rather than write. But it's a great, great book. Okay, so I have these two books, and because I read books ahead of time, they're on my e-reader. But this book I absolutely loved. This is a love story by Jessica Soffer. It's a love letter to Central Park. It's also about a long-term marriage. It's also about their son, the son in this long-term marriage, who grows up. It's about love, loss, and it's just written so gorgeously that there were times where I had to stop on the page and just hold my breath. It's a beautiful, beautiful, moving book. And also it has my litmus test where it has all the feels and you'll cry. It's just wonderful. I love this book. Okay, sorry to do this for you, but here's another e-reader book, Rabbit Moon by the incredible Jennifer Hay. I love everything that Jennifer writes. And actually, as soon as I started reading this, I contacted her and said, Jennifer, I want to have you on the Blaze. And she said, no, Jenna's having me on the Blaze. And I said, well, far be it from me from wrenching this from my sister. But it's an amazing book. It starts out with an American girl in Shanghai who's been mysteriously run over, and she goes into a coma. We don't know why. We hear from her parents. We hear from one of her friends. We get to know these people. It dips in and out of their lives. Parts of it are in present tense. Parts of it are in past tense, which I really love. It's I haven't quite finished it yet, but I have maybe 20 pages left. Love it, absolutely love it. Okay, and the last book I have is I can't pronounce it right. I bet Mary knows how to pronounce it. Isola?
I think so.
Isola. Allegra Goodman. Allegra Goodman, again.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
She wrote Sam, and she's going to be on the Blaze. She wrote Sam, and this is this incredible book about a woman who's marooned on an island. And I've just started it, and of course it's Allegra Goodman, so it's absolutely incredible. I just love it. And it's got this gorgeous cover too, and you will all love it too. So these are my selections. I'll zoom in and out. And that's it. Let's move on to Karen, because she's on the upper left-hand side.
Great. Hi. Thanks, Caroline. So I've got a couple of books, and two of them are a little bit older from this year, but they're really good. So I have A Short Walk Through a Wide World by Douglas Westerbock. And it's a great book. It's a little bit on the darker side, but it's a story about one woman as she journeys the globe trying to outrun a mysterious curse that will destroy her if she stops moving. So it's really an original, kind of different story, and I just highly recommend it. You can't put it down, basically. And then another one from earlier this year, which I'm halfway through, is The Husbands, and I know Mary loves this one. It's about a woman, takes place in London. It's about a woman who comes home one night to find a man in her apartment that she doesn't recognize, and he says he's her husband, and she totally freaks out and runs out into the street and tries to like get a hold of her neighbor and all this. And finally, as she comes back and she starts to talk to him, and as she's getting kind of like used to it or thinking about it, like he goes up into the attic to get a light bulb, and a new man like comes down the stairs. So it's kind of funny. It's just really a good book. It would make a great Christmas gift for someone who really loves a great story. And then my third book this is also a little older book, but I can't help myself because I love it so much. This is Mr. Dickens and His Carol. And it's a fiction book, but it's about the creation of A Christmas Carol and how it was written. And this one makes a really great audiobook. It's so magical. This is by Samantha Silva. So if you want the audiobook, you can go to Libro FM. And it's a great thing to listen to while you're decorating your cookies or the tree or wrapping presents. Again, and the cover, I just love the cover. This is a really great book. And my last one is so fun. It's Cher.
I'm trying to read that. Oh, you got it.
So this also makes an excellent book for anyone. Her story is inspiring and she's amazing. And I love the back because it doesn't have a bio of her. It just says, Cher is a global icon. Mm-hmm. And I just love that so much.
That's wonderful.
So this is a great book too. So those are my recommendations, and thank you so much. And I'll pass it to Jenna.
Oh my Lord, no, I should go last.
Oh, okay, sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm resting the mic back, just like in Bridesmaids, just to tell everybody that Caroline, by the way, is here tonight on her 31st wedding anniversary, and such is her love for books that she's cheating on her husband by being on the Blaze to tell us about her favorite read.
That's right.
She jumps off suddenly. It's not because she doesn't love us anymore. Karen.
No, I love you all.
We love you. We love Karen. We love everybody. I will go last. Thank you, Karen. I will remove myself to the end of the line, and I will hand over to Ellen.
Hi there. First of all, if you have a chance to go see the Cher show, you can see it because they have all of the Bob Mackie costumes.
It's
great.
Great.
You come out and you remember where you were and when you saw them. And it's second only to actually seeing Cher, who just said she's going on her last world tour, but she's 78, so she's got a couple more years to go, I think. Anyway,
I do too.
One of my favorite books of the year, it's on a lot of bestsellers lists and top books of the year, Fire Exit by Morgan Talty. Knew I wanted to have him on the show. He was on the Blaze in November for Native American Heritage Month. The book tells the story of a sort of a sad man who lives across from the reservation where the woman he fell in love with chose to marry somebody else because she was pregnant and she wanted the child to be raised as a citizen of the reservation. And because he was not a citizen of the reservation, he couldn't be the father. He couldn't be officially the father. And he lives across the river from the reservation and he watches this girl growing up, but he can't engage with her. And he's struggling how he can ever engage with her. What could he say? And meanwhile, he's occasionally on the reservation. He occasionally sees the woman who is the mother of this child. He's dealing with his own stuff. And it's just a really great book. Morgan is a huge talent. He also wrote Night of the Living Rez, which was connected short stories. big talent. And he gave a great interview. We really had a terrific literary conversation in which I stumped the author by asking him a question that confused him. So,
what was it?
I don't remember, but he was like, let me think about that. And he also talked about how confusing his own book was now to him, even though he had written it, which I thought was kind of interesting.
That's interesting.
It was very interesting. All right. The rest I unfortunately have on my phone. I will try to hold them up neatly. Whale Fall.
Nice cover.
Beautiful cover. It's very different from the UK cover, so you can go see that one. It's by Elizabeth O'Connor, not to be confused with the book that came out the year before, also called Whale Fall. This is one of my 2 isolated island books that I'm going to talk about. On this one, a whale lands on an island. It's 1938, and the whale comes, and then these 2 ethnographers also come. And they're there to sort of check out what the island's all about and the history. There's only 47 people on this island, and their presence changes the nature of these people. And the young character is a woman named Manode, and she's really curious about going back to the mainland with these people and starting off her life and getting out of this very isolated agrarian culture. And her eyes are kind of widened, and she wants to go. And of course, all sorts of drama ensues. It's the most beautiful book I read all year, and that's actually saying something, because I read a lot, as we all do. The next book, also an island book, came out earlier this year, Clear by Carys Davies. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right, but this is about a Scottish island that now has one man living on it, Ivor, who speaks in a very long lost Scottish dialect language that nobody talks anymore. And they're in the process of clearing the land. They want the land to be rid of people, and Scotland wants to take the land over, different developers. And so they send a former or a reverend of sorts who's losing his church, and he needs money. So he takes the job to go over to this island and get Ivor off. And first of all, there's a language problem. But secondly, he falls while he's there, hurts his head. The Scottish man finds him, brings him into his home, where the guy's basically in a coma for several days. And then when he wakes up, they sort of have to figure out how to communicate with each other. And they form a friendship and a bond, and they learn the language. And it's just also another beautiful story. Both of those books are 225 or fewer pages, so they're quick reads. And these are also both really good audiobooks. So those are my 2024 books. In terms of things that are coming next year in the debut category, I can talk about some, but I can't host them all. Homeseeking by Carissa Chen is a big saga story about a life of 2 characters who are in China, meet as children, and separate after a while, and then 60 years later find each other in Los Angeles, of all places. And so it's this separate lovers across the decades connecting with all the story and the history of China. It's really pretty. I have not finished it because it's big and long. But it's really great. It comes out, I believe, in January. Several books do. I also have, let me get my phone up. The End of Things, which is actually yet another island book, but this is a contemporary island book. And this is a book in which it's a friendship book. It's a thriller book. This woman goes to an island for a romantic getaway, and she befriends a woman on the beach, and then this woman disappears. And so it's a modern story, but it's a thriller. She thinks she might be in danger. It's by a woman named Sandra Chwalkowski, I believe it's pronounced. And that is also coming in January. And then my final book, also coming in January, is, I love this cover. It sort of reminds me of your Dickens cover. The English Problem by Bina Kamlani. Bina Kamlani was Saul Bellows' longtime editor. And this is her debut novel. It's coming out in the end of January. And this is a story about Indian independence. Mahatma Gandhi selects a very smart and well-connected young Indian man to go to England and sort of figure out what they're all about, learn the laws, and come back and sort of save India from the British. And he goes over there as sort of an activist, and he kind of falls in love with Britain. And it's a beautifully written book. I think it's going to be a really exciting interview. I'm interviewing her very end of January on Debut Spotlight. And I think as somebody who obviously was imbued in the beauty of Saul Bellows' writing and has that whole experience, I always think it's interesting when editors become writers. I know Caroline just interviewed Shred's Betsy Lerner, who wrote Shred Sisters, her first novel. And, they come at it with a very different sensibility. And so this book is gorgeous. And I'm very excited to talk to Bina in the fall. So that leaves me to hand off to Mary Weber O'Malley, the Magnificent.
Hello, everybody. So, such great picks. I love all of the books we've been talking about, except I'm very salty about Rabbit Moon because Pamela and I, neither one of us have gotten that galley yet.
Oh, this galley?
So, yeah, that galley.
Wait, did I actually get a galley before
you,
Weber
yes,
O'Malley? No,
you
sir.
Did.
No.
So I put in another huge request for that today. Absolutely have to get my hands on that. And so let's see. First, I am just putting in the chat because this morning, the books I'm talking about tonight are all already released. But this morning I recorded a podcast. So if you want to know what I'm really looking forward to in January, February, March, you can listen to Thoughts from a Page podcast, where my friend Pamela Klingerhorn and I go on every quarter and talk about our most anticipated reads. And holy cow, winter is exploding with incredible titles. It's just unbelievable. So I have all books tonight that are going to make great gift books. And the first one is not a novel, but it is close to my heart for two reasons. I have dealt with aging parents and healthcare issues with them over the years. And my new position, thank you, Mark. My new position is for the Book Industry Charitable Foundation. And this book benefits them. Every copy that's sold, the proceeds go to the Book Industry Charitable Foundation. It is my medical journal. Now, this one should be bundled with Being Mortal by Atul Gawande, which talks about the hard conversations we should have with our aging parents, with our spouses, with any loved ones, about what we want the end of our life to look like, what's important to us. Pair that with a password keeper journal, like this one, because, and I'm going to tell you, for parents, you put these three books together, and then my medical journal, which gives you all of the doctor stuff that you need, helps you keep track. Those of us of a certain age have had a few procedures, and every time I have to go fill out those forms at the doctor's office, I have to think back. So this is just a really practical. Bundle it with the password keeper, and the password keeper, I'll tell you why. When I worked in store, we had a woman come in and she bought all of the password books we had. And I kind of joked with her. I'm like, somebody's really forgetful, and she said, no. She said, everyone I know is getting this because my father-in-law died suddenly, and he had given us all of his information and all of his online banking. He did everything on his iPad. He did not give them the iPad password. And Apple would not release it until they had a death certificate in hand and proof of, the will, the executor, all that. So they got it eventually, but what a nightmare. So pair those three together, bundle them up, give them to someone you love. They'll probably roll their eyes, but when you explain that this is doing everybody a favor, it will be a welcome gift for them and for you.
When we explain that you recommended it, they'll say, "Oh, okay."
It is a perfect gift bundle. Next gift book. Oh my God, for literature lovers everywhere. Ann Patchett's Bel Canto annotated edition.
I saw that. It's gorgeous.
So she went through, and reading these annotations is like being in the mind of Ann Patchett. Trying to hold it up with my virtual background, it doesn't show up really well. But you can see they did it in a different color. So it looks like she has just taken your copy and marked it up. For her to go back and mark it up so much later after it was published, she had so many thoughts about what was going through her mind at the time, maybe what she would have changed, what she didn't like after it was published. It's just a treasure. What a great coffee table book, gift book. I tell people all the time, for host gifts, you're going to a party. Not everybody drinks. I try to bring flowers over to my daughters, and she's like, "Mom, my cat will eat them and die because most flowers are toxic to cats, and hers is a menace." People have allergies. You really can't bring food anymore because people have food sensitivities. And the one thing that everyone can have in their house without a problem is a book. So wrap up one of these books, bring it with you. It'll be something the host or hostess looks at later and continuously thanks you for. This next book is perfect for that. Perfect. The Serviceberry by Robin Wall Kimmerer. She wrote Braiding Sweetgrass, which has been on the bestseller list for like 10 years running. They came out with a young person's edition. This book is a treasure and a gift. I opened it up. Just reading one paragraph will lower your blood pressure. It talks about abundance and reciprocity in the natural world. And it starts out with the humble serviceberry plant and how she's walking through and she grabs a handful and she eats them. And, this bush gives freely to the animals and the birds and anybody who wants to partake. And then she talks about this gift-giving society, what that would look like, and how I can go to the store and buy a pie. And I now have a pie and they have my money, and it's a very sterile transaction. But if my neighbor gives me strawberries from her garden and then I use those to make a pie and then I share that pie with my neighbor and others, now this has become a circular transaction that has brought people together. This entire book it's just paragraph after paragraph of beautiful sentiments of how this world could just be a much more beautiful place. And I mean, it's just little tiny thing. It retails for $20. Perfect hostess gift if you can find it, because I'd love to take credit for being the reason this is hard to find right now, but I'm not the only bookseller raving about it, and people are buying them up like crazy. So if you can find it in a store, buy several copies. You're going to want to keep one, and you will have several that you know exactly who you want to give them to. Next, another coffee table book. This would be a great gift for every nature lover. It would be great for teens. It would be great for, just so many people. Years ago, I fell in love with The Hidden Life of Trees. I have never looked at a tree the same way. Peter Wollman, who is a forester, I think in Austria, I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure, wrote this book about how trees care for each other. trees actually nurture each other. If there's a tree that's struggling, the other ones will attach to its roots and provide that tree with nutrients until it gets stronger on its own. They protect each other. If there is a tree and an animal, a giraffe comes and starts eating the leaves, it will emit something. I don't know if it's an odor, or the other trees then immediately sense danger and start pumping a toxic tasting substance into their leaves. So the giraffes will leave the other trees alone. Trees are incredible. I loved this book so much. And now we have The Hidden Life of Trees graphic adaptation. This is full of incredible illustrations. It's just, I find myself picking it up and just looking and reading a page here and there and looking at the beautiful pictures. Like I said, this is a great gift. If you have a book club, book exchange, it's maybe a little pricier. It's for $35. But a book club, book exchange, this would be great for that. If you have a grab bag, you get Uncle George, and you really don't know anything about Uncle George except that he smokes cigars and drinks Pabst Blue Ribbon. You could probably get him this book and he would be very happy. So The Hidden Life of Trees, a graphic adaptation, is just a beautiful, beautiful book. And my last one is for the parents. My God, Mark Cecil, I'm thinking of you because you have kids of this age. This is What Time is Noon? And this is by Chip Layton. I think I found him on TikTok. And he started posting texts from his kids. And then people started sending in their texts from their kids. And so he just has a whole channel on Instagram and TikTok. And he turned these things into a book. Every time I read one of his posts, I feel like it is been written by my son. Our youngest son used to text me from college, and they all sounded like this. So I'm just going to read a few of them. One of the texts to a parent was, "What time is noon?" I don't understand keys. Is my new niece a boy or a girl? When does my birth certificate expire? What is my country of citizenship? Quick! Do I put the bear spray on before I go hiking, or just if I see a bear? How do I get the next sheet off the lint roller? Is my passport good in all 50 states? And what's the word for the cages we slept in as babies? So it's just filled with funny, happy birthday, Mom. I Venmo'd you $6. This is perfect for any parent. It's perfect for your parent. If you are of an age where you texted your parents, yes, Mark, what time is noon? I brought this to the attention of my bosses at Skylark. I said, I wanted them to order it for me. And I said, you might want to take a look at it too. And they were like, oh my God, we're ordering a whole bunch of these. These are going to be on the counter. It is just an absolutely perfect book. So those are all of my gift book recommendations for tonight. And I'll be back next month with some great titles that are releasing in January. And there are a bunch.
We're so glad that you came back to share these with us, Mary. I love your recommendations. They're so great. I just realized that one of my books is in the other room, which is kind of a bummer. But I will give you the books that I have and then run in and get that. And you guys can look at my shelves or talk amongst yourselves for 5 seconds while I vault over the dog like Indiana Jones, grab the book, come back. But the books, I have a mix here of books that are already out that I love this year and books that are coming out next year, authors whom I'm doing interviews with. I'm so excited about. The first book, you guys probably read this back in the summer, but this is one of my favorite books of the entire year, is The Cliffs by J. Courtney Sullivan. I know all of you out there have authors whose every book you buy, right? You're like, oh, thank God that author has come out with a new book. I'm going to grab it. I love the book so much. Courtney is one of those writers for me. So I pestered her mercilessly on Instagram Messenger until she sent me this galley. And then I was like, oh, thanks. And I came, kind of like I did to Jennifer Hay about Rabbit Moon. How did you think I got that galley? I know where she lives. She lives in Boston. I'm like, I'm coming to your house unless you send it to me. You have a choice. Anyway, so it helps when your authors are local and you can get the galleys from them. So Courtney's book, like I knew it was going to be a luscious treat. Those books where you sink into the world so much that it becomes your only world for a while and really carries you away. And The Cliffs was like that for me. There was one night when I was having back pain and I was awake in the night and was like, should I do a meditation thing or should I, try to go back to sleep? And after a couple hours tossing and turning, I'm just like, okay, I rarely do this with a book because I want to pay close attention to the book, but I'm just going to read The Cliffs. I felt fine within like half an hour. And then I stayed up the rest of the night until it got light out reading The Cliffs. It's so good. It's about a woman who departs from her life under very messy circumstances and goes to a Maine town where her best friend is. And it revolves around a house on a cliff. Perhaps that's why they call it The Cliff. You would think, but no, there's actually a reason the book is called The Cliffs. And it has to do with the history of the house and the women who have peopled the house at various historical times in its history. So it's like this beautiful striated history of the house. But it's also sort of a portraiture of New England going back to when the indigenous people were the only people here. And then what happened when the white people came to the cliffs. And then this sort of plants the seed of a mystery that unravels throughout the book. So if you love history, if you love stories about women, if you love stories about New England, and most of all, I would say if you love houses, like if you think houses are people in the same way that I do, like the houses is kind of its own character, then you should definitely get The Cliffs if you don't already have it. And if you do, buy it for somebody else who loves houses or all of those things. Really, really just amazing book. The second book is Peter Heller's Burn, which did come out earlier this year in October. Again, I'm a Peter Heller fangirl. I buy everything he writes. He's kind of like Hemingway, except not drunk and mean and dead. He writes beautiful lyrical stuff about the outdoors and being an outdoorsman. And yet all of the books also have this engine driver of a plot. And what is amazing is both Caroline and I have interviewed Peter before on Blaze. And he says he doesn't plot out his books. He doesn't outline. He's a total pantser. He sits down in a coffee shop or in his house and just writes line after line of these beautiful lines. And he said that his number one mantra for all of his books, and the only mantra for all of his books, is advice his mentor gave him, which is just write something that doesn't suck. None of the Peter Heller books suck. I can tell you that right now. So Burn is sort of hearkening back to Peter's, one of his first books, which was called The Dog Stars, which is a dystopia. Burn is also a dystopia, and it's about two hunters in the backwoods of Maine who come off their hunting trip to find out that they've walked into a civil war in America, that the country is torn and burning, and they don't understand what is happening and what has happened and what's going to happen. Like, how widespread is this? Is this with Canada? Is it with other countries? Is it just America? Is it just Maine? One of the men... Thank you, Mark. I also do not understand pantsers. Mark and I both write outlines that are basically as long as the gift books that Mary mentioned. Then we just kind of fill in the blanks. But anyway, these guys walk out of the woods in Maine, and one of them is a dad, and he is thinking, is it possible for me to get back to my wife and daughters in Vermont? So if you are feeling queasy about the prospect of imminent civil war, this might not be your book. But if you are a person for whom an augmented dystopia makes you feel better about the dystopia that you're living in, you should definitely read Burn. And the writing, of course, is beautiful because it's Peter Heller. His sentences unspool beautifully, sentence after sentence. And P.S. Peter is the writer I most want to be caught in the apocalypse with. And after I finished reading Burn, I wrote to him and said that. And I was like, so if the zombies come, I know you're in Colorado, but I will claw my way there, and then you can keep me safe because you obviously know everything about survivalism, even though you're a gentle soul. I will be interviewing Peter about Burn on January 3rd. So you can join us for that and ask all your questions about how to survive in the apocalypse. You're welcome. So my next interview coming up is with Jean Kemp Horowitz. It's going to be on Friday, the 13th of December, 4 p.m. Jean is coming back to the Blaze. We've had her on before for two of her previous books, and one of them was The Plot, which was the prequel to the sequel. And The Plot was a book I loved very, very much. I loved it so much that it actually inspired the book that I just turned into my editor that'll be out in 2025, because The Plot is about murderous writers. A writer who gets a manuscript under some sort of ill-advised conditions and kind of takes it out as his own. This is the plot of the plot, and then finds out that somebody knows that secret. So it's kind of a cat and mouse game. Like, will that writer who is now famous because he stole somebody else's book, like, will he be able to figure out who is stalking him and what will happen? The Plot, of course, is on the bestseller list for like a jillion years. It's so fantastic. And the sequel is obviously the sequel to The Plot. So those of you who like a good baton handoff from one book to another, who like continuing characters, who like to read books about writers, this is the book for you. And like The Plot, and I would say like Yellowface, for instance, the sequel is kind of a send-up of the publishing industry as well, and of life as a writer. So if you're wondering what writers are really thinking, like when you're out there on the road and they're signing your books, or like how hard it is to get a publishing deal, or like what about marketing, or like what do we really think? I mean, maybe only writers find that interesting, which is why I really love The Plot and the sequel. I'm like, oh, writers, they're just like me. Oh, because I'm a writer. But anyway, if you like books about writers and writing and publishing, and you like a really good, tight, fast-paced thriller, read the sequel. You can read it as a standalone, or you can read The Plot and then the sequel. And P.S., the sequel is as good as the plot, and that never happens with sequels. So read the sequel, buy the sequel, give it to people, and tune in on December 13th to see me interview Jean live on the Blaze at 4 p.m. ET. You can bring all of your questions, but no spoilers. Now, ladies, talk amongst yourselves just for a moment while I run and get my final book. You can look at all my bookshelves.
Mary can talk about bookshop.org for us, I'm sure.
I can talk about. Thank you, Ellen. Perfect. So most of our books, what time is noon? I didn't get in on time to have that added, but you can still find it on our bookshop page. All the books we talked about tonight can be found in the A Mighty Blaze stall on bookshop.org. Bookshop.org is the indie bookstore world's answer to the big A, which sells books at a loss just to try and run us out of business. So Bookshop benefits indie booksellers, bookstores, and the A Mighty Blaze. So A Mighty Blaze, we, as much as we'd love to just bring you this for no cost, things do cost money. And one way you can support us is just by purchasing your books through bookshop.org on A Mighty Blaze's page.
Thank you for saying that, Mary, and thank you for asking, Ellen. And I will say that our bookshop director, Sibylla Nash, has put all the books that we're talking about tonight on our stall on Bookshop. So you can just go boop in the stall and grab one of the books, and you will be supporting indie bookstores. You'll also be supporting the Blaze. What could be better? And you'll have these fantastic gift books. Okay, so for all you lovers out there, this is one of my most anticipated of 2025. I have just killed Mary. And it's not.
I love it so much. I love it so much.
It's so good, right? So good. And I decided to end the show with love, because what could be better? But so my friend Nicholas Butler, so many of us love. He also like ran for office in Wisconsin. He's a novelist and a patriot, like fantastic, lovely guy, lives with cows, has a beer, drinks whiskey, wrote a number of excellent books. I will say that Nick is the author, I think, who writes the best last lines of any author I know. So his dismounts are always superb. It's a 40-year chef kiss of dismounts. So this is his newest book, The 40-Year Kiss. And if anybody out there has ever wondered what happened to the one who got away, what happened to the love of your life who you met when you were a kid, and maybe you didn't act in quite the right way because you didn't know any better, because you were just a baby and you did wrong things and the relationship kind of frayed and fell apart. What would happen if you met that person again 40 years later? So this man and this woman meet 40 years later in a bar, And to find out what happens, you have to read the book. I loved it so much, not just because Nick is so smart about relationships between men and women, between generations of the family. It also is a beautiful sense of place. Like, he loves the Midwest and he loves Wisconsin. I also love the Midwest, and I love Wisconsin and Minnesota, that whole environment. So I'm like crying, eating my popcorn, reading about farms, and there's a sort of a class difference within the people in this couple as well that he does so beautifully. But most of all, the question asks, like, what happens to love? Like, does love endure? Does it thrive? Does it stay? So this comes out on Valentine's Day. What does it say?
It's a romance that features a mature couple, which I loved, because he nailed it. Absolutely nailed what it would be like, in your 60s, even though you were with this person when you were 20. A lot changes in 40 years. A lot changes here in 40 years. And so when this couple comes back together, he so beautifully captures what it feels like as they're getting intimate again, in these new bodies that they have. It's magnificently done. One of my favorite of next year too.
Mm-hmm. Really good. I love this book. So if you're wanting a really feel-good book in February, because who doesn't want that in February? We all need a little bit of feel-good in February, or anytime, really. Mark your calendars for 40-Year Kiss. I will be interviewing Nick on Valentine's Day 2025. So come back with your chocolate and your champagne, or your hot tea, like whatever. Just come and hang out with me and Nick, and we'll talk about the 40-Year Kiss. So thank you, you guys. Blowing big kisses to everybody out there in Reading Land. Big kisses to everybody at the Blaze. Love you guys. Thank you so much for sharing your beautiful books with us. And happy ho holidays, everybody. Don't forget, books make best gifts. So go grab them from Bookshop. And thank you for being with us, bringing your light to our Blaze.
Great to see you all.
It's so fun.
Love you guys. Bye. Until next time.